Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I think of this as the ADHD trailer. You know what I mean?
It certainly crams a lot of the movie into it, doesn't it?
There's a lot of movie, and it's just, they put it in a dice cup, and they shook it up, and they put it out, all of it's out on the felt, right there. And it's fine, because this is a shoot-'em-up movie, and for me, I got the gist of it. I imagine when I saw this in the theater, I was deeply excited for this movie. This was the movie that I wanted after Generations.
Oh, absolutely. You know, it's funny, though, rewatching this trailer, it's Borg. It really is emphasis on the battle with the Borg, which was the best nemesis that the Star Trek Next Generation team ever had. And I guess other series ended up fighting the Borg as well. The title of the movie is Star Trek First Contact, and there's like no reference at all. Like there's no sense of what that first contact is through this trailer. And so I thought that was an interesting thing to kind of leave out of the trailer, is the entire, subplot of trying to make sure that first contact with extraterrestrial beings happens.
Well, I think that's a great question, because it's not just the final moment, right? It's the whole B story on planet Earth that is largely not there at all. And I wonder if that's because they didn't have quite so much faith in it, or because, as you know, I see this very much as a dual first contact story, right? I mean, first contact with the Borg Queen, that is a new thing that we didn't know about the Borg from the TNG exploration of the Borg, which was, you know, not huge over the arc of the entire series.
Yeah,
but you see what I mean? Like in terms of a faith in that particular part of the narrative.
Even watching the trailer, I mean, you see a glimpse of the Borg Queen being assembled, and but you don't know that she's like a Borg Queen. It just seems like, oh, she's just a different type of Borg. Like it doesn't give you a sense of why is this movie called First Contact. That, you know, because it's the Borg. They've had first contact with the Borg. Is it first contact with the Borg and Earth? Like it's an unclear title in context.
Oh, that's a good one. I'd never thought of that. Yes, this is actually from the perspective of the Borg. The whole movie, it's Borg's first contact with Earth back in time. You just nailed it.
That's what
nailed
it is.
it.
That's what I'm here for.
I really resent the fact that they revealed the central Borg Queen visual effect in the movie in the trailer. That makes me crazy.
Well, and the writers, I know that when they saw that, they, you know, got a note to Sherry Lansing, who was head of Paramount at the time, and it's just like, you can't put that in the trailer. That's like the big reveal. That's the thing that people are going to be excited to see. And she's like, it comes down to business often with these people and their decisions. She says, if it's going to get people in seats because they go, wow, that's a really cool looking thing, then I'm going to pay money to go see it. That's the end game here. It's not, you know, did we reveal something that we shouldn't have? And from a business perspective, I can see her point, but from a creative perspective, I really do wish that they hadn't shown that in the trailer.
Overall, though, especially coming off of what was otherwise kind of a lousy movie.
With a better trailer. The trailer made it look a lot better.
Trailer was better. This still was a trailer that was exciting enough to get you in the seat, yes? Would you call it a successful trailer?
I would call it a successful trailer on that count.
Sherry Lansing. Curse you, Sherry Lansing!
In his nightmares, he can see them. In his mind, he can hear them.
Locutus.
In his soul, he can feel them.
I've just received a report from Deep Space 5. Long-range sensors have picked up...
Yes, I know. The Borg. Set a course for Earth. Maximum warp.
Now, in Earth's darkest hour, he must fight them again.
Captain, Earth. Life signs?
Population approximately 9 billion. All Borg.
How?
Time travel. They went back and assimilated Earth. Changed history. I must follow them back. Repair whatever damage they've done.
But this time, they must travel to the past.
April 4th, 2063.
To save our future.
You're all astronauts on some kind of Star Trek.
They invade our space, and we fall back. They assimilate entire worlds, and we fall back. Not again. The line must be drawn here.
This is The Next Reel, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and that over there is Andy Nelson.
Hey, hey, hey.
And we spoil movies. Tonight on the show, travel back with us to 1996 and our first cinematic engagement with the Borg. Jonathan Frakes has the con with Star Trek First Contact. Before we get into that, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com. Subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app, or follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel.
And if you are a regular listener of the show and you're interested in supporting our ongoing work investigating great film, please consider a regular donation through our Patreon page. You get to join our back channel conversations on Slack, listen to the members-only weekend show, The Saturday Matinee, and you get better chances of being part of our Listener's Choice episodes. Just head on over to patreon.com/thenextreel.
A few scenes in this movie, Andy. And I should say, of the next-gen movies, I hope I'm not alone with this, I stand behind this as the best of the next-gen movies.
Well,
Would you agree?
You're not alone in that.
Okay. I think this is the movie that we needed, certainly after the last one. We needed this was the movie that we needed to see the crew become wholly capable unto themselves without the support of another captain. and without the baggage, and we'll talk about that, the baggage that comes with writing this, the Generations film compared to writing this film. And we needed some shoot 'em up in space. We had been getting more and more of the shoot 'em up in space in the television series, and I really think that we needed this movie to capitalize on that. And so this movie excelled in those areas, I think, and was redemptive for me. But there are a few scenes in this movie that are some of the best in all Trek, that I think are executed just perfectly, 5-star with a heart perfectly. Alfre Woodard and Patrick Stewart on the observation deck, absolute pitch perfect sequence to my eye. Alice Krieg and Brent Spiner, the first skin transplant, absolutely, it's one of those perfect sequences for me. And I actually think James Cromwell and Marina Sirtis as drinking buddies, and she gets to say time a whole lot. She's not generally
from Malcolm McDowell.
right. She's not generally very funny, but I think this sequence is cute and funny and charming, and James Cromwell is great as a drunk. He is incredibly talented. Between Alfre Woodard and Alice Krieg and James Cromwell as the guests, who are such high-powered talents, I think they really lift this movie in ways beyond just the shoot 'em up, bang bang in space.
I would agree, and I would go so far as to say pretty much any scene between Alfre Woodard and Patrick Stewart is fantastic, like the one where he reveals the Earth and that they're on a spaceship. That's a great scene. Their goodbye. I mean, they just have so many touching scenes. It's just like two powerhouse actors working together, and it's so exciting to watch the two of them on screen. And likewise with Alice Krieg and Brent Spiner, the two of them have not just that first skin transplant scene, but also I really like the one where he, starts escaping and then he gets his skin cut and freaks out. She's just like, tear it off. Don't be tempted by the flesh, and he can't, and then it essentially is kind of their joining, they're they're proof of their fully functionalness.
Okay, now let me ask you about that specifically. There's sexy time with Data, and she kisses him, and he obviously, as part of the Soong series, android, he is a fully capable, and we know he cries, so he has to be able to have some other sort of mechanics involved. Yes. And so he's a fully functioning robot. Do you buy the kiss? Was that an important sort of pinnacle of that scene?
I thought it was a fantastic point of that scene. I thought that it just emphasized, with the skin and everything, I think, and the fact that she had, turned his emotion chip back on, the way that she was playing him and playing with these emotions and kind of showing him this other side of things. I thought it was really interesting, and I liked all of that. I thought it was an effective use in context of the story that was being told here.
Okay, then let's talk about the Borg, can we?
Let's talk about the Borg.
I think the Borg, and I'm speaking globally now, the Borg is the central best antagonist in Star Trek, right? It is, I think, the most culturally resonant and relevant. It is the greatest conflict with its own internal sense of being, right? That technology, this unbridled, impossible march of progress of technology. We, on the Federation side, the Star Trek that we know, we can't live without this technology, right? I mean, the technology allows us to do so much of our great exploration. It is what the entire civilization is built on in the future, and yet this is the dark side of it. This thing that we can't stop. Technology is the villain. This sort of cultural appropriation of your uniqueness, as it will become a part of our own. It's tough to argue that it is the ant colony that you just can't stop. And so I've always loved the Borg. I love the Borg as an evil, faceless, nameless. It is just this massive dark cloud that is impossible to stop. And so
just like the other greatest antagonist, Pete, the Tribbles.
Andy, just when I think you're not paying attention to me, you knock it out of the park. The Tribbles are
essentially the same thing.
They are the same
minus
thing.
the technology.
Exactly the same thing. They are the ultimate nemesis of the original. How did we not get a First Contact movie where the villain was the Tribbles?
I'd love to see a little Tribble Borg.
Yes. Oh, I would love to see a Tribble Borg. Okay.
Anyway,
Now,
sorry to derail you.
All of that said, no, well done. All of that said, this movie destroys so much of what I love about the Borg by introducing the stupid Borg queen. No disrespect to Alice Krige, and I think what they did with the Borg queen in terms of her performance on screen was terrific. She's great. But I hate the presence of her. I think it ruins what I know and understand of the Borg, what the original or what the Next Generation series did with their introduction of the Borg. That there exists a queen makes them less terrifying than when they have no central identity. And that makes me insane, man.
I couldn't agree more. It really it frustrates me to no end, because what was so frightening in the TV show when they were battling the Borg, particularly the two-parter Best of Both Worlds, when Picard is assimilated, is that it's just this enemy that just keeps coming. There's no sense of that central point that you can take out. And it made it much more frightening, I thought. And I agree with you. By having this queen, it creates this focal point of energies, like the head vampire. If we get the head vampire, we can save everybody. It's like it ruins so much of what the Borg, what was so great about the Borg, and becomes very frustrating for me. And so, I feel like, I do like the scenes with Alice Krige. I like what she's doing with Data. I think that it's some really interesting Trek stuff, but I agree it ruins the whole the greatness of what the Borg was.
Yeah, that's really it. It makes them stoppable, and I want them to be not stoppable.
Well, I guess supposedly the way that they ended up treating it is like, well, there's more than one queen, so they kill this one. It's killing this hive, but it's not killing all the Borg, so that they could kind of keep them going. And see, then they start writing stuff like that into it, and it's just like, it ends up just kind of ruining some of that. And I know it was dictated by the studio. Like these guys all wanted to do a story about the Borg, and then they pitched it, and the guy was like, well, what's the point of this villain? Who's the main bad guy? And so he kind of, whoever it was at the studio, ended up being the person who pushed them to have a kind of a specific central villain, hence creating this Borg queen.
I feel like they underestimated the sort of terrifying power of a faceless enemy, and because that was the argument, right? We need to put a face to the enemy, somebody with which they can have a conversation. Right. We need to be able to have those moments. And had they not done that, we wouldn't have had the showcase sequence of Alice Krige. They would have had to be more creative about how they highlight a specific Borg, to be sort of a representative. But making it the queen, and in fact, making her animated in a way that the Borg are not. Right. Is equally frustrating, right? They make her sort of royalty and give her much more character presence and resonance than I think it makes her less scary.
For me, it makes the Borg less scary.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it takes a lot of power out of what they had done with the Borg.
Yeah, it's really frustrating.
And here's a question for you. Obviously, this is the cinematic debut of the Borg. For people who never watched any Star Trek and are coming into this, does the Borg as a villain make sense? Like, did they put enough in here to make it make sense? The inclusion of the Borg Queen, does that help it make sense? Like, in my head, I'm like, I wonder if that was kind of some of the logic behind it, because I don't know. I just feel like the Borg it's an interesting enemy, but I wonder if people who are new to them might not get it as well.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And because, we come into this having been fans of the Best of Both Worlds and the Picard storyline with the Borg, because he'd been dealing with, that Best of Both Worlds was the end of season 3, I think.
I think it was 4.
Season it was over the first episode was the end of season 3. The second part of that two-parter was the beginning of season 4. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's true.
Gotcha.
And we've been living with that as a past in canon for a long time by the time this movie comes around. And you know, in that respect, it's kind of ancient history. And so I wonder how much more they could have gotten away with just a little bit more backstory on the Borg before we jump right into you know, our storyline. In this movie, one of the things I think as a fan does very well is, man, they don't waste any time up front. They give us exactly what we need to see with the Enterprise E coming to the rescue in a big battle, Picard disobeying orders, the Admiral getting blown up, him taking the lead. I mean, I think that the first 10 to 15 minutes of this film they're just stellar Star Trek minutes.
I agree. I always get frustrated with the incredible ease it seems to for them to blow up the Borg ships. Like, I love the space battle. I think it's fantastic. But once they pinpoint that one spot, it's just like the whole thing just goes up so quickly. And then when they're battling the sphere, that goes up so quickly. And I know there's probably, it's because the Borg were secretly beaming aboard the Enterprise. It's like, yeah, but still, their ship's just like, I don't know. I was a little disappointed with how quickly those battles came to a finish.
That's kind of the same thing with all the Borg technology. The Borg individually are pretty easy to dismantle.
Were their ships that easy to blow up? Because it just seemed really easy to.
But I guess I've always bought the whole angle that Picard has this special knowledge of this one. This is Smog's
right,
one scale missing. You know what I mean? That's what we're talking about here.
That's a good point. Yeah. All right, I'll give it to you.
Yeah, I think it deserves to be given. I know. But you were right. I mean, they start writing in all of these sort of narrative hoops. By the time we get to Voyager, the central kind of the main battle in the last episode of Voyager is taking down not just a Borg queen, but the Borg unicomplex, right? They call it the unicomplex. It's the center of all Borg activity in the universe. So now there is not only a queen, but there's a main home. Like, there's a home for the Borg, and that also makes me crazy. I don't want there to be a central home, right? They're more dangerous and more deadly when they don't have a home.
Exactly. So many frustrating things with the way that they continue to use the Borg throughout the series.
Yeah, a little bit, and I think it starts here because this is where they start to kind of explore the Borg as that central nemesis, and I feel like they took the wrong fork. And they make the movie less scary as a result. But I will say, on the whole, this movie as a darker Star Trek is really great, and it's easy to forgive some of that stuff because I was just so ready for it. I was ready to see exactly what they were trying to put on screen here, and the relationships were sharp. And as a sort of next generation Trek showpiece, it's still a win for me.
Something else that frustrates me with the Borg. And maybe you have the answer for this. Why do we never see Borg aliens? Or if they're assimilating everybody, why do we never see children who have been assimilated by the Borg?
Well,
I'm sure a lot of it is
in Voyager.
Effects. Do we? Okay.
Yeah, it is.
Aliens and
in this
children?
one, aliens and children. We do have some. Well, and aliens are still considered in canon in some of the games. We do have alien Borg that are effectively in canon. We do have a credited alien Borg, and I am looking at a picture of it now, and I realize there is an alien on this movie. It's a Bolian, which is another humanoid with blue skin. He has a split down his face. It looks like his face is split down the middle, like it was screwed together, and you can still see the seam. And so it's really hard to tell that it's actually a Bolian because of all the contraption, but it is an alien. And there are some other episodes where you see like Klingons that have been assimilated, and so if you can do an image search of just Bolian Borg, and you can see the various Borg contraptions on top of him. So
that makes me happy because I know we introduced him briefly in the he's in engineering. We see him. Geordi says something, or they chat real quick before.
That's right.
Before the other engineers start getting assimilated. So I appreciate that he's there.
Yes, me too. Played by Don Fisher. The cost of making a Borg was high. They only made 8 Borg for this movie, and they make them look like 800, and that's that's great. It was really effective to make them look that threatening when they only had 8 Borg. And these are the same 8 Borg that were used repeatedly throughout Voyager 2. So these Borg, they're great-looking Borg. And they're such an advancement over the Borg that we had in The Next Generation. So
Yeah.
All right, so that's your Borg question, and we do have. You said children. We actually do have. In fact, there's an episode. It was called, I think, Collective, where they actually find a hive or a collective, a Borg cube that is run by Borg children that have become disconnected from the collective because of some break in technology, but they're all totally Borged out kids, like young kids.
Huh. Okay.
And it's cool and haunting.
Well, that's good. I just, they're assimilating everybody across the universe. And every time I've seen it, it's always been humans. I'm like, how are they assimilating everybody if it's always human?
Right. Well, and there is a species 8674 or something. There's one species in the universe that is more powerful than the Borg. And that's the only thing that the Borg can't assimilate. And so there's another big narrative. Because the Borg are effectively the Klingons to Voyager, right? What the Klingons were to, the original series, I guess that's a little broad. But the Borg are the central big bad. And so this whole narrative of what we're going to do with species 8674, or whatever it was, we need to pit them more against the Borg because the Borg are scared of them.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, are we doing our thing where we talk about nerd questions? Is that a thing that did you run into nerd questions here?
I did, and that was one of them. That was one of them. So here's another one, and this is hopefully an easy one. So Worf, it's clear at the beginning of this, he had left the Enterprise. Now
Yes.
my recollection of the TV shows is doesn't he end up on Deep Space Nine? Is that where he goes, or does he go to Voyager?
He does. No, he goes to Deep Space Nine.
Okay.
And the reason he does this, after the Enterprise D was destroyed, I think he was in Generations.
Okay.
Right? In terms of our timeline here, in Generations, he was, I'm sure he was like flipping burgers or something somewhere.
Nice.
The captain of Deep Space Nine, character named Benjamin Sisko, was discovered that dealing with Klingons on the frontiers of space was very difficult, and that only Klingons can deal with Klingons, he said. And so he reached out to Worf and said, "I need you to come be my Klingon liaison and head of security," or not even head of security. He was, I think, operations or something, because they had Odo, who was the chief of security there. So anyway, they brought him to DS9 and they gave him, his ship. He was kind of the captain on that ship whenever it was not docked with Deep Space Nine. And so as soon as they realized that after a couple of seasons of Deep Space Nine that it was very difficult to have a Star Trek series that was based in a location that doesn't change, then they introduced this chip and the Dominion, and he started fighting on his own ship. So okay, so then the timeline goes Star Trek The Next Generation, and then Star Trek Generations, and then Deep Space Nine, and then this happens somewhere mid Deep Space Nine. Yes, and then he goes back to Deep Space Nine after this.
Okay. Oh, so
because he's on Deep Space
Nine.
Right. This is, I think this is in the middle of Deep Space Nine.
Why, of all the people who are assimilated to be Borgs, why is Picard the one who gets a Borg name? He becomes Locutus. Not even the Borg Queen has a name. Why is he the one who gets a name? I
cannot answer that question, Andy. I don't know. I think it's because of narrative convenience. So part of what the Borg had done was to get Picard because of what he had in his brain, right? They wanted him because of what he knew about the Federation. So they did want him specifically. They wanted to read his mind so that he would give up all of, so that they could get the codes or whatever,
Yeah.
And so he was a special acquisition on behalf of the Borg. More than just other humans. That was part of the
all they do when
narrative.
they acquire people is they just assimilate their knowledge anyway. So what makes him any more special?
That it was written that way.
Yeah, right. Because he was the star of the show.
He was the star of the show. That's right.
Yeah.
No, I can't back that up.
All right. Well, that's always been something that I found silly. As much as I like the name Locutus, I think it's a really cool name, but it's just always troubled me. So speaking of things that bother us or don't bother us, I thought it would be fun to just run down this little list of love it or hate it questions for you.
Love it or hate it. I like it.
I know. Just see what you think. All right.
No, that's good.
So let's kick it off. We're going to start with Geordi's ocular implants, aka the first contacts.
I love it. I love it more that they are the first contacts. I thought these were great.
Yeah. I like them. I thought that it was fun to have him in something else.
Well, not only that, but much of it is because I find LeVar Burton enormously charming and charismatic, and I love being able to see more of his face on screen. So if for no other reason than we get to see his face, I call that a win.
I will also point out that in the trailer, you get a quick shot of a close-up of his eyes as he's like doing a scan or something. But in context of the trailer, I wonder if I would have thought, and other Trek fans would have thought, the Borg have assimilated Geordi, and his eyes are now Borg eyes. That was an interesting way to play that up in the trailer.
I think so, too.
All right. Next, James Cromwell as Zephram Cochrane, dancing.
Oh, great. Great. Are you kidding? You hate it? Oh, I love it. He's drunk. He is drunk, and he loves his music, and he's terrible at it. I thought it was fantastic.
Maybe I hate it because I hate that song, and I feel like that song. Like later, he puts on, was it Steppenwolf when they're taking off? Yeah, and it's much better. But this song, I just hate this stupid Oogie Boogie song.
That's great. No, I thought it was huge. Yes.
All right, Enterprise E.
Oh yeah, it's about damn time. This is my ship, man.
This is a great ship. Yeah,
it is a great ship. Are we going to talk more about the ship? Because
we will talk more about it. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
What about Picard's dream within a dream opening of the film?
It served its purpose for the jump scare. Generally, I'm not crazy about dream within a dream.
I like that it helps set up the Borg element of our storyline. I'm not crazy about it, but yeah, the jump scare works. So yeah, I guess I'll give it that much. How about the Borg sphere ship? I don't think up until this point we'd ever seen them in a sphere ship. It's always been a cube, right?
So they have been introducing more round shapes. I think you're right. This was the first time we've seen a Borg sphere. I just don't remember, and I'm getting the Voyager Next Gen stories all mixed up. But I actually do like the sphere. I think it is. I like it aesthetically. I think it's remarkably inefficient shape for what they have already taught us about the Borg, because when you put that sphere inside a square, there's a lot of dead space. What are they doing with that weird-shaped dead space that they normally wouldn't have to worry about if everything was still a square?
Yeah, I don't like it at all. I think they just should have stuck with the squares. I think they're like the cubes have such a cool feel to them as something that's going through space. It doesn't matter if you have these odd angles. It doesn't need to be streamlined. I've always loved the cube, and then all of a sudden it's a sphere. I'm like, why are they doing a sphere? What is that nonsense? So I'm on the hate side of that fence.
Here's my thesis, and when the opening shot, right, the first shot of the film when we're close in on his eye and we start backing out, there's a whole lot of curvy stuff. Right, as we're pulling out, lots of circular things that don't make anything more than aesthetic sense. Like it might be pretty, but I have a feeling someone was channeling H.R. Geiger.
Yeah,
like it starts to feel much more alien than Borg, and that's, I think, unfortunate.
That's a really good call. That's a great point. What about the time travel method? The Borg seem to have come up with a pretty convenient way to do time travel. You don't have to hit warp 10. You don't have to loop around the sun. What did you think of this?
Well, I think, thank God for chronometric particles. I don't even know what that is, but it sounds awfully sciencey. So I buy it. I like it that it was different. It was a new way to travel through time. I really like the way that we get to see the past and the present at the same time, like they're in a wake, like they're surfing. I thought that was very cool. So I bought it.
I actually do like it. I only don't like it when at the end of the movie they use the same method to travel back to the future.
Yeah.
Because I just didn't buy that all of a sudden now Geordi's mastered it and can do it himself.
Yeah. He's very smart, but come on.
Yeah. What about the Borg plans? Apparently they're going to... you think they're going back in time to assimilate Earth. But it seems like maybe they're actually going back in time to stop first contact. Or maybe it's stop first contact, then assimilate Earth. How does all this work for you? Do you like this plan? Does it make sense?
I've honestly never asked myself that question. Does it make it? It's always just sort of made sense to me. Of course, but once you discover they're going back in time, well, of course they're going back in time to assimilate humanity. This is an interesting thing that you ask, though, because they're going back in time to a specific point in time. Why did they go back at exactly that moment, and why did they not give themselves just a little bit more time? Right?
Isn't this the time travel conundrum that we just talked about in our weekend show?
Yeah. So that's an interesting thing. I absolutely buy that they went back in time to assimilate humanity, but when there was no resistance after the Third World War. I'm not sure how much I buy stopping first contact as their central means to do that.
I like that. I like both concepts, but I don't think that they were integrated well together. So when you kind of learn, because you see as they're going through the wake, whoa, it's Earth's population, it's entirely Borg. And then we get there and they're just like shooting laser beams at the camp. And I'm like, oh, I thought we were assimilating Earth.
Because what they see when they're in the wake, they then see Earth outside of the wake as having been completely Borged out.
Right.
And when they see Earth in the past, they are both so I guess they're stopping first contact so that the Vulcans don't come. And then that makes it easier for them to assimilate humanity. What do you think of that?
I think that's fine. I just, knowing that the Borg already seem to have a sense of Earth history, I feel like they probably would have been better served to just go straight down to Earth land and then just assimilate everybody at that camp and not worry about this nonsense of shooting it from space, because they clearly aren't very good shots.
Well, that is abundantly clear. Good. Okay. Solved.
All right. What about the escape pods?
You ask that with a sense of sort of a tone of disdain, but I actually like them.
I do too. I think they're kind of funky looking. I'm not sure how well they do coming through an atmosphere, but I do like them. I think that they work pretty well for me.
Okay, good.
What about the depiction of Zephram Cochrane in this film? I know it's different than I think he's been on, I can't remember which show, but he was on one of the TV shows at one point.
I like him here. I like anytime we get a chance to go to explore these characters and in a way that they are not what memory serves them to be. You know what I mean? And I love what the reason or that he is such a kind of a miscreant provides great fodder for, I think, the B story, which is otherwise kind of a snoozer. I love the conflict that is inherently connected by all these people who know him because of what they've been taught as a hero, and then when they discover him, he's an alcoholic and a mercenary. And I think that's really fun. And of course, he's portrayed so well.
I agree. I do have story issues also. We'll get to that here in a minute. But otherwise, I like exactly what you said, that this is a historical figure that everybody has an image of in their head, and when you meet him, he's actually just a goofball drunk. So I like that. Okay, so my turn to take the lead on this, because I have been really interested in your perspective on this central point. The Borg rules, Andy. Getting past them is fine and easy as long as they don't see you as a threat. Do you buy it? I don't buy it. At least the way it's depicted here. I feel like they did some of that in the TV show, as I recall, and I felt like it worked better there. Here, it's like, okay, these Borg have been assimilating. They come in on deck 16, and they're assimilating everything from like deck 11 up. Like they're just going crazy assimilating the ship. Except when our heroes are near, they're not enough of a threat to bother with. I just don't buy it. If they are having such a time like assimilating the ship from deck to deck, and they're just kind of going through the whole thing, why are they stopping and not worrying about these few? It really frustrates me. I know it's a story plot point that has to work in order for our heroes to kind of get around, but I just don't buy it the way that it's depicted here. It really ended up just frustrating me. And I think it's one of those weird Borg rules that in the way that it's done in the film, it ends up kind of taking some of the steam out of the Borg and makes them seem not quite as scary, because you're like, well, you can just walk past them and it's okay as long as you don't, punch them or something.
Totally. I could not agree more. It breaks one of the fundamental sort of understandings that you have of the Borg as this thing that spreads. I don't buy that they would stop. I don't buy that they would not see somebody who hasn't been assimilated and not try to assimilate them just to get it out of the way.
Especially if it's as quick as like putting their hand up to their neck and they're putting those little tubes in their neck and implanting some nano dudes or whatever it is that they do. It's like it's awfully quick.
Yeah. You do see some sense of, so this is me kind of rationalizing it. You do get some sense of that there is some preparation involved. So when a Borg is early assimilated, you see, some of the full Borg kind of leading the new baby Borg, freshly assimilated folks, and there's some, so maybe there is a question of like resource constraint, like their nanoparticles have to make, new, rubber suits or whatever. There may be a sense that we're just not gonna assimilate everybody blindly because we can't take them all at that pace. Maybe you could say that.
Yeah, but
I've
they've
never heard that
assimilated so
argument
many
made.
decks. That's the problem. It's like they've already said so many times, they've already assimilated 90% of the ship or whatever. It's like,
well,
stop?
The Borg also have a central mission, which is not to assimilate the ship. Their central mission was to convert the deflector dish into that relay thing so that they could call Borg from the, I think the Delta Quadrant or further into the Alpha Quadrant for the first time. Right. That is what they had to do. And so maybe that's what they were solely focused on.
To that end, if they had assimilated as many decks of the ship as they had, and we know these ships hold lots and lots of people, they should have had more than 4 Borg out on the hull of the ship working on that deflector dish.
Right. With their little fancy backpacks.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. All right. What do you think about the holodeck scene? We have Private Dix and Alfre Woodard. They go into the holodeck, and it's clearly one of the books that one of the old-timey detective novel, holodeck novels that Picard is fond of participating in.
Which I guess had been seen in the show, this particular story. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't mind it. I think it's kind of nice. Initially, I was like, why is he bothering to go lure a couple Borg here? It seemed kind of silly to me. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, he needed to pull this piece out so that he could figure out what their plans were. Okay, I guess there was a point to it. So I guess in the end, I didn't really end up having a problem with it. I was a little surprised that the holodeck even has an option where all of a sudden the bullets are real. Like that, I was like, well, that seems awfully dangerous to ever have as a setting. But
yeah, take the safeties off. That's something they do all the time.
Do they?
Oh yeah.
Why? Why would they do that? Why would that be a thing?
I don't know.
Let's go participate in this holodeck scene, but we might get killed.
Because it turns out the Federation is an enormously libertarian state. Like,
Right.
if you want to do that with yourself, you are free to do it.
Ugh.
I hate the holodeck scene. It's definitely on my hate list. I know that one of the other initiatives of Picard here was to have a weapon that could not be shielded against, right? I mean, because their energy weapons, the Borg adapted too quickly, and so he didn't have a gun that he could actually, fire against them. So I get that. He needed to turn the safeties off in order to be able to shoot the Borg. But I've never been able to make sense of that. Like you said, the safeties thing, that seems too cheap, too easy and out.
What would have been better then? When Lily is taken to the Enterprise, it's because she's passed out after, freaking out with Data, right? She had an old weapon around her that she was holding. If she had had that, then Picard could have just used that, and they could have eliminated the whole holodeck scene. They
could have done that. I think this was one of those things they had to shoehorn in for people who really love the Private Dix or his holo novels.
Yeah.
They needed to put that in there. That was a fan service.
Right.
What do you think about Data tricking the Borg Queen?
It's in the end, it just seemed obvious. It's one of those, the way that they're going to write the script is to just kind of play you up to that last moment. And then, I mean, I like the moment with the resistance is futile line and everything, but at the same time, I feel like it also takes some of the steam out of the battle, because for me, it seemed like the battle really should have ended with Picard and the Borg or the Borg Queen as kind of the final battle. And really it's Data ends up the one who kind of saves the day, and Picard doesn't really end up having to do anything. And so, his tricking the Borg Queen, it's okay. I guess in story, it just seemed obvious though.
Me too. Although, had we not done it the way we had, it would have required more narrative hoops to get Picard to demonstrate that all Star Trek uniform undershirts are sleeveless.
Well, the Borg do like a hot ship, Pete.
So Worf ends up joining the team here when he comes off of the Defiant. What'd you think of that? Is that a problem for you?
It's not. I like it. I think it was fine. I was kind of torn. I'm like, gosh, it would have been fun to have him kind of joining the fray with his own ship. But I think it was fine with him kind of just jumping back in with these guys.
Yeah, for the series, you know, he's got to be part of the team. Lieutenant Hawk, my man, got a little confused with him last week because I want him in every movie. And that's why. So in my defense, Lieutenant Hawk is Borgified through his spacesuit. Love it or hate it?
I hate it. It's nonsense to me that he gets Borgified through his spacesuit. I mean, I guess I wouldn't have had an issue with it if I would have seen like they had ripped his suit open to like get to him or something. And it just the fact that it's like he looks just like he did, except when he turns, oh, now he's got a Borg face on. I don't know. That was a little frustrating to me.
This is a Casablanca emotion for me. If I gave it any thought, I probably would hate it.
Right.
They try to auto-destruct the ship. Do you have a problem with that?
Maybe it's just because I like this ship. It was like, oh, God, they're not going to blow it up already. They just killed the ship the last movie. Yeah. It ends up not happening, and I guess we're not with this ship long enough for it to have a lot of gravitas like it did with Star Trek 3 when we really kind of emphasized that whole auto destruct. But they do linger on it quite a bit. I mean, we do have the whole auto destruct sequence as they do the countdown and everything. So, I'm a little bit on the middle ground. I have some love and some hate with the.
Riker and Geordi at the end, they end up riding with Cochrane in his first warp-powered ship,
right? Yeah.
The Phoenix. And of course, because of that, they once again put the therapist in charge of running mission control. Troy is on comms. What do you think of that?
I hate every part of this. Every single part is just an absolute hate for me. It drives me nuts. It's like, why are they in the ship with him? Everything, just like he should have had some of his own people. I know it's just to get the perspective of our crew and everything, but the whole thing.
And it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be Lily.
Yeah,
Lily was supposed to be that person, and so they were filling that hole for her because she was up fighting the Borg.
I would have preferred.
Still, that doesn't sway. That doesn't sway.
No, it doesn't sway me. It just seems like, hey, well, let's go along for the ride. There's room for 2 more. I hate it. I have big problems with Riker and Geordi in everything they do on Earth because there is no sense of tension with anything happening involving the whole the rocket that they're building or anything. They're always smiley. There's no sense of gravitas. They're just like, it's so casual. Everything happening on Earth is just far too casual, and there's no stakes. And it's one of my biggest problems with this film is everything on Earth is just flat and lifeless. I mean, they try to give Cochrane some interest as far as, he's this drunk and he doesn't want to. He denies the hero's call, but it's so flaccidly done. It's just. I really just hate the way it's all done. And all the hero worship and everything, I'm just like, it's a time travel movie, and these guys are potentially ruining it just by telling him all this stuff. And I just get so frustrated with everything happening on Earth.
I agree with you. I don't get quite so mad as you are. Yes, you are. I feel like the intention of this B story is to lighten up the A story going on the ship, I think. And
did it need that?
Well, would it have been Star Trek had it not? Nah. What is that?
I'm torn. That's like saying, Best of Both Worlds needed more light moments. I don't recall it having many light moments. I feel like it was a pretty solid, just adventure, like a frightening adventure story, battle with the Borg through that whole 2-part episode. I mean, I could be wrong, but I feel like they actually made it pretty tense. And did we need to have the half of this film be kind of light and fluffy as they do nothing on Earth?
I'm with you. I mean, I don't think it was necessarily useful, and I think they could have had, they could have had less of what's going on Earth in order to prepare for first contact while, dealing with the central issue, which is let's fight the Borg so that they don't get in the way of this. That's the thing that we are capable of as other future people. We are capable of taking care of this future problem for you while you can get this thing back online. So anyway, the last question is probably the maybe it's the most important question of all. They actually use the words Star Trek as a line in the movie. Too far?
This is another love it or hate it. I think it's kind of funny hearing it from James Cromwell. Like if somebody else on the show, like if one of the regulars had said it, I probably would have really just hated it. The fact that it's Cromwell and he's just like, oh, so you guys are you're astronauts on some sort of a Star Trek. It kind of is funny. I'll give it that.
I thought it was funny. I usually hate that. I hate it a lot. But in this case, you're right. Because it's Barclay. Had it been Geordi saying we're astronauts on a Star Trek, I would have just overturned the chairs. That's horrible. He gets a pass because it's Cromwell. So
yeah.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about your story problems with this thing. What is your major malfunction?
I just feel like I appreciate that they wanted to do a story with the Borg. I appreciate that they were going to do a time travel film and they came up with this idea, hey, let's go to the moment of first contact and include that. Like, I think all of that is really interesting. But I feel like they could have made a much more interesting script out of this if the Borg had, instead of just shooting from space, if they had actually landed and started assimilating. If they had, or if they had been shooting, if they had shot some key part and now it was a race against time for Riker and his team to help figure out what to do to get Cochrane into space so that he could actually fly the warp drive. Like if there was something that was broken, that would have made it so much more interesting on Earth. Like a little Back to the Future moment where we have to figure out how to get the lightning bolt to hit the flux capacitor so that we can hit 1.21 gigawatts. That was like such an amazing moment in Back to the Future, and there's nothing like that going on here. There are no stakes happening in the Cochrane storyline, especially as it relates to the Borg. I feel like, it's fine having the Borg on the Enterprise, but why not also throw some Borg on Earth that now they're trying to fight those two and help get this Phoenix off the ground? I just feel like there was a lot of stuff going on with the way that they structured the script that could have made it so much stronger. But it ends up being pretty interesting on the Enterprise, although I feel like the Borg are weakened. We've already discussed the Borg Queen. And then just a flat story on Earth. Now, I do like the first contact moment at the end of the film, but I just feel like they don't do a great job with this script.
The thing that really frustrated me this time that I've never actually noticed myself frustrated about is, to your point about the sort of lack of intensity in that story on Earth. I think they would argue there are stakes. They have to do it by this time because that's when the Vulcans are going to be out in space at this one specific time, and we have to make this deadline to get the ship repaired so that we can get it off the ground, right? I mean, I think they would make the case. I think Jonathan Frakes would make that case. The problem I have with it, that I think would have increased the intensity between these two stories, the crew on Earth, Riker and his team, had no idea what was going on with the Borg on the ship. They left with just the only thing going on the ship was like, the temperature is a little bit high.
Yeah, right.
Okay. And then I don't like at the end when they see the Enterprise coming around and the Enterprise is about to shoot them, Riker and Geordi are all smiling. They're like, yeah, it's coming by to send us off. Like there's no sense of impending doom about that. And I find that really frustrating. I really wanted them. I wanted more of a connection between these two crews. I wanted them to be working together to overcome the larger thing. And they weren't. They weren't even aware of it.
No, it really weakens the whole story. The fact that the B story on Earth just becomes just such a weak element of this storytelling process. There's no connection between anything, and there's no motivation for that story to move. I mean, like I said, if they weren't there, the Phoenix would be taking off anyway. It's like nothing had been broken. There was nothing wrong. The only thing that had changed is that Lily wasn't around. And that's it. But it's like Cochrane doesn't even bring that up ever. He's just like, I can't fly without Lily here. It's like there's nothing that happens that shows me as a viewer that the Phoenix isn't going to take off tomorrow because something is wrong.
Yeah.
And it's like all it is them helping him work on it and just praising him. And it's just like it's a nonsensical story that really just gets so frustrating every time I watch it now. It's like, where are the stakes in this part of the story?
I've never found myself so frustrated as this viewing with that story, like so bored. I really couldn't wait to get back up onto the Enterprise.
Yeah. So those are my issues. I feel like Moore and Braga, in coming up with this story, could have found a way to connect everything better, and it just didn't happen.
Well, to that point, the first draft of the script actually had Picard on Earth solving some unrelated mystery with a photographer.
Boy, if that doesn't sound like an episode.
Yeah, right. And the B story was actually Riker fighting the Borg. And again, neither were sort of connected with one another. And that sounds much more like what we get in Nemesis and Insurrection, and just a terrible thing. And it was actually Picard. It was actually Patrick Stewart who said, "Why can't I fight the Borg?" During a script review. I'd rather be up on the ship, and that dramatically changes the tone of the film.
Well, it makes more sense, too.
Yeah.
As somebody who had been assimilated by the Borg, I mean, it becomes his story. And again, that's why I get frustrated by the end when Data is the one who saves the day and Picard really does nothing to stop the Borg. It really kind of kills the end of the film for me, because I wanted... Picard is the one who's got the baggage, and he's the one who should have had that great arc that gets resolved by the final destruction of bringing the Borg down. And we lose a little bit of that.
Jonathan Frakes says that he says, I'm sure that this film was offered to A-list directors, and I think they were frankly not excited about doing Star Trek 8. And that's how he becomes the director, doing his first major motion picture.
I've got to say,
that funny.
It is very funny. I've got to say, as much as I'm complaining about this film, I really like what he brings to the table as a director. I think that he has a great handle on these characters, and I think he directs an interesting film. Like, I enjoy watching what he brings to the table.
I do too. He had already directed 8 episodes of The Next Generation, and he directed 3 episodes of Voyager and 3 of DS9. So, I mean, he was certainly not only being in all of those episodes of Next Generation. They call him the cruise director, the viceroy in charge of fun. Says, I think that was Marina Sirtis who said that. They really love working together, and that they have a really great time. This is not a film that came with a whole lot of political, hullabaloo.
Yeah, and I think that's when she says the cruise director, I think she's talking about like the boat director, like he's the director of the cruise. Make sure everyone has fun.
I am sure that's not the case, but I get what you're saying there.
I am sure that is the case. Like when I heard her say that, I was like, it's like he's the cruise director. It's like he's Gopher or whatever the lady was on Love Boat.
It was Julie. Gopher? Come on, man.
I don't remember.
Julie was the cruise director. It is not even remotely what she was trying to say. I can't. But I love it as the joke that you just pulled out.
Thank you.
Moore said, he says it was a better experience on this film because it was a second time, because we didn't have the laundry list to deal with that they had on Generations. And you can feel that. I feel like they actually let this crew be who it needed to be.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. It's just like I like that they were given a chance to do a little more on their own. I just wish that one note hadn't come down. Well, we need to have a very specific villain. I feel like that one note brought this down a bit for me.
I love the Enterprise E, though. I love what Zimmerman did with the Enterprise E. He says, I've had the opportunity to build command centers for the military, and what they want is something that looks like the bridge of the Enterprise. And
that is so funny.
I find that just remarkably cool. This Enterprise, as a crew complement of 885, that's 130 officers, 725 enlisted crew, with a total capacity of 2,500. That is the evacuation limit of this class. It's a sovereign class ship. It is listed as Explorer, Defensive Explorer, and Diplomatic class ship.
2,500 evacuation limit. So how many people fit in each of those pods? Because that's a lot of people. And it didn't feel like, I mean, there was probably like 50 pods or something. That's like a lot of people per pod. And I think they left some people behind.
Well, that's not.
Well,
that's
I guess
not,
there
when
were a
they're
lot of
talking about
Borg.
evacuation limit. They're not talking about those who can evacuate the ship. They're talking about using the ship as an evacuation vehicle from some other, like if it's going in on a rescue mission.
Oh, I gotcha.
And especially when you compare that to the Galaxy class, the Enterprise D from the rest of the show, that, as you recall, it has 1,012 officers and crew, 200 visiting personnel, and 15,000 person evacuation limit. Again, it just carries many, many more people. It's a much bigger ship.
That's crazy big.
It's crazy big.
That's that's awesome.
The deflector dish set that they ended up building for the Borg deflector dish was actually 7/8 actual size, according to Zimmerman. And, can't even give us. Apparently, it was restricted by the size of the set. They couldn't build it any larger than that. I think it looks fine. I've always felt it looks a little small compared to the CG of the ship and the model of the ship that they have floating over a planet. But it is still it's a cool set. They seem much more excited about it than I think I was. I was much more excited about the stellar cartography set in Generations, as in terms of the new thing that they're showing us on the Enterprise.
Yeah, I think what I like about it, though, is that, and maybe they just don't emphasize this enough, but, in space, you're on the hull of a ship, and that means you can be really anywhere on the ship. And it does show you at some point that, you're kind of on that little front angled down part where that deflector dish is, right?
You're upside down.
You're right. I would have loved to see a little more of that play out, like from a little wider shot where you could kind of get the sense that these guys are kind of on that underside front area, like the bumper of the ship, essentially.
Well, they do. I mean, they show us the establishing shot.
No,
of that.
I know,
but
I'm just saying I would have liked to see it play out a little bit more like that,
Yeah.
where you're actually kind of seeing some of it. So you really get that sense that these guys are pretty much kind of magnetically, glued onto the ship on its underbelly. And because I think that's a really cool perspective that you don't think about a lot in space, is that, when you're in space, the underbelly is essentially as much the top of the ship as the top of the ship is. So I thought it was kind of a fun way to play that out.
Yeah.
So.
I think that's a little bit of a struggle with cutting that. How do you show, because you want to reset the audience's perspective so that everything is right side up again so you can follow the narrative. I think they do have that big establishing shot where you see them on the bottom of the saucer section, and there is that first initial close-up of all three of them when they're upside down in the frame, and eventually that gets reset. But I actually, in this case, I think it would have been cooler to show that wide establishing shot reversed. So you actually see the crew upside down and the ship is right side up.
Right. And
to demonstrate more carefully or more clearly where they are in relation to the rest of the ship.
Yeah, that would have been nice. That would have been really cool.
At least they were able to close the loop on magnetic gravity boots. At least we have more magnetic gravity boots. Thank God.
And magnetic guns, which is great.
Yes. Although this is another nit. Like, it feels like when they show Picard releasing his gravity boots to jump across to the other side of the deflector array, right? And then they pull out this wide shot, and you see him jumping off of something that's essentially a 45-degree angle up, but he is flying directly across from it, right, parallel to the hull of the ship. And I just don't think he would have done that. I think he would have, had he jumped off of that angle, he'd be floating out into space.
Yeah, that's always kind of one of those things. It's like, it didn't quite make sense.
No, it doesn't make sense to me.
He would have just shot the wrong way. So I agree with you there.
Let's do a deep scene dive, Andy.
Let's do it.
This is the last scene. Set it up.
Cochrane has gone into Warp 1. He's shot away from Earth and back, somehow managing to land his rocket back on Earth, and everybody's happy. And then, of course, we have the Vulcans clearly got the signal, because this scene kicks off with the Vulcans arriving, or I should say a mysterious ship arriving now at the Montana campsite.
What did you, why is this an important scene for you?
This was just an interesting scene, I think, in context of the entire Star Trek universe. This is really like the beginning of all of it. This is the connection of Earth to an outside that is bigger than itself, and finding that the first alien life form, or having that first alien life form find us and then kind of connect us to the bigger picture. I thought it's just, it's a really nice moment. And I actually like the moment. I think that this particular moment was done pretty well. I liked how it was done. I liked that it was these Vulcans and that they come down and there's this connection. I found it to be effective. So for me, and plus, I Jerry Goldsmith's score through this film, I think it's so nice having Jerry Goldsmith back in the fold. And his music in this scene is so strong. It really just made this scene work really well for me.
It does for me too. I don't think as much. I find it so underwhelming after after what we went through with the movie, and it's kind of forgettable. And I think that's a story problem, because it should be a much more momentous thing. It should be a bigger deal. That this is First Contact. And in fact, when you take a step back and realize what has been at stake all along in this movie, it is Star Trek. It's the whole thing. If we didn't have this First Contact, if we didn't hit warp at just the right time, the entire series would be for nothing, right? I mean, it would be nothing. So the stakes here are very high, and I have a hard time feeling that sense of kind of intensity. I think Cromwell is very charming. I love the close-ups, the way they frame around the back of his hand to show him trying to do the Vulcan finger salute. I think that's really cute. I love that he ends up shaking hands. I think that's a nice character moment with the Vulcans. But the weight of it, that it pulls back to reveal that sort of wide shot of the camp, and he's introducing the Vulcans to music, and they're all sitting around at that cafe table. I find just really underwhelming.
Well, that's kind of the next scene after our team goes back up in space.
Yeah.
I'm not super thrilled by that scene either, when he's giving them brandy or whatever, he's bourbon. But I like that this first contact moment. I don't know. I guess I think it's a strong moment. I completely agree with you though. Is it as well deserved as it should have been? Probably not. And a lot of that, I think, falls to the script and the fact that there wasn't any tension in the Earth story, and the first contact, the titular point of this whole film, is really left by the wayside. And as nice as a moment as it is here, because I do think it is a nice moment, all of the steam is kind of taken out of it, because we never really have any build to any concern that this moment is ever going to happen. So
yes,
I
Andy,
think
that's right. There was never concern that this would be lost. That is the central point. I always knew that this, I was never worried. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I think, the biggest problem with the film is that, and like I said, in the entire Earth story, it's like, you give me that ticking clock that we're not going to make it to get this lightning to hit the clock tower moment. That's what the whole Earth story really needed.
In terms of cast, our lead Vulcan is played by Cully Fredrickson. He was Van Helsing's assistant in Bram Stoker's Dracula in 1992. You may have known him there. It's funny. He's one of those faces. Like, I see him and realize that I find him enormously familiar, but I certainly haven't seen him in a lot of stuff, and he only has about 35 credits to his name. The other two Vulcans were also Borg. And so you may have seen them in that same movie playing Borg. I will say on Cully, he does look like a Vulcan.
Oh yeah.
You put those ears on him, and man, he totally fits. I actually thought they were trying to pitch him as either a young Sarek or, somebody who's sort of related to the Spock lineage somehow.
Interesting. I think that he did have a look, and for a little bit I was like, I wonder if they are going that route, but I like that it's never pointed out, and you can kind of question it if you want to. But I did like him as a Vulcan. I just thought he had such a great refined Vulcan look, which I thought was, the reveal of the hood pulling back and you see the ears, everything. I'm like, this was great. I really enjoy the way that they present this first meeting with aliens that we get for our group of Earthlings here.
How much of that is to the credit of Matthew Leonetti, our cinematographer?
I think that the cinematography here, for the most part, is done really nicely. In this particular sequence, I don't know if there's anything that stands out as something that really blew me away. I think it all works pretty nicely. It's effective. The dark night camp and everything, the alien ship, like the lighting is pretty nice. I will say the shot that really stands out for me, that really just I found so poignant and touching, is the shot when Cochrane, after he talks to Riker, he's like, hey, they're looking to talk to the guy who created warp drive, and he starts walking up there and he goes up to Lily, and you get this shot behind the two of them as they just gently hold hands just a couple seconds, and then he walks forward. That shot for me just said so much about their relationship and just the power of the moment. I really, the framing of that shot, everything was just like, that was such a perfect moment for me.
Totally. I really agree with that. And it's funny, you can sort of see, I think he has more of a trademark, Leonetti, than some. Certainly, some who've worked on Star Trek, their trademark is the work that they did on Star Trek. But he comes to us. I mean, he did Poltergeist with Tobe Hooper / Steven Spielberg, and sort of you can feel the way he uses those close-ups and the close-ups on hands. Think back to hands on TV, hands on shoulders in Poltergeist, like the way he captures human intimacy. I think you get in this sequence. I think it's really very strong and sensual. Not in a particularly sexual way, but just sensual. And he also, we've talked about him on the show with regard to his work on Dawn of the Dead in 2004.
And Strange Days right before this.
Yeah, Strange Days right before this. That's right.
Which I think has some of that same look, actually, thinking back on it.
Yeah, I think so too. So.
And we'll be talking about him next week because he's back on with Insurrection.
Right.
So, and the missile silo at this particular, we don't see it in this particular scene, but it's, in this location, we have this missile silo, this nuclear missile silo that Cochrane and Lily had used. They'd taken a nuclear missile and they had converted it into what becomes the Phoenix, which I think is really just a fantastic idea in the world of Star Trek. The fact that they take this item of destruction and they turn it into this amazing thing to kind of advance science and technology and move the human race forward. I love that. And they actually filmed that. There's a Titan Missile Museum down south of Tucson, Arizona. That's where they filmed all of that stuff. It's in a real missile silo with a real nuclear weapon sitting right next to them, which I think is just fantastic. It's actually a really interesting site. We've gone there before, and I don't know. There's something really intense about being in a space like that. So I think they did a great job of incorporating that into this particular part of the story.
Can you touch it?
I don't think you can touch it and have that sense that Picard has.
I want that shot of Picard and Data, but I want it with you and your son. little Data.
That's his nickname, after all.
That's his nickname. Anyway, on the Deep Scene Dive, you've already noted Jerry Goldsmith.
I was so glad that he was brought back into the fold of this franchise. I think that he had brought so much to it already with his music right at the beginning. I'm really appreciative that the team ended up bringing him back, because he ends up kind of closing out this generation of the Star Trek films with his stuff. And it's just the themes that he brings here. And I mean, he's also one who's good at integrating some of the older themes and everything. He does it so nicely. But then just this theme that he creates for this, it's just, I mean, it really is just a powerful theme. It's really touching and poignant. So I'm just so glad that he got to come back to do more of the movies.
Totally. Absolutely. Any other points on the Deep Scene Dive? It's kind of a short scene. I don't have a whole lot to say.
I think it works well. It's another one of those moments where I always question, I'm like, do I buy that our team is all kind of off in the back corner watching the whole thing play out? They have the whole, oh, well, we hit our signature, so they couldn't tell that we were beaming you up and all that stuff. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
I know, I guess I'm okay with it because in context of the film, it's like, you know what? It's a moment that we all wanted to see. It's that moment in time travel movies where they get to see kind of the resolution and everything. So I'm okay with it in general. I don't mind it. And if anything, I really enjoy seeing Picard and Lily kind of parting ways. I'm glad it didn't turn into some romantic relationship. That would have just really made me irritated. I'm glad it's just like they became close, kind of close friends over the course of their adventures with the Borg. And so I really appreciate that because she is somebody, I mean, we had that great moment in the observation deck where she kind of, she is the only one who probably could confront him and about this Ahab sensibility that he has with wanting to defeat the Borg.
Yeah.
That moment is so great up on the observation deck, and having her being kind of our audience surrogate coming into this film, it's so effective. And that goodbye that they have, I think it's really touching. I think
it's a good scene to leave the film on. I think generally it's fine.
I almost feel like, did we need to see the crew back on the ship, or could we just have ended with Lily? They beam back up and Lily looks up and she sees just kind of the little time travel signature as they kind of pop back through the whatever Geordi figured out. And because we end with their camp as they kind of are, hanging out with the Vulcans and everything. I almost feel like we could have done that. And it is a Star Trek movie. You want to go back to the Enterprise. I get it. I just feel like it was so tightly wrapped up at this point.
Yeah, no, I agree. You definitely need the make it so. What's he going to say? Engage? Make it so? What's he going to say?
Which one?
You don't know. You don't know. We have some other little cast highlights. Actually, Brandon Braga and Robert Moore are in the holodeck sequence.
Right.
They're tripped out there. The voice of the Borg is Jeff Coopwood, who deserves credit. It's a cool, scary voice.
Is that a standard? Do they always use him as the voice of the Borg on episodes too?
I've always assumed that they did, but I am not entirely sure of that. Star Trek Deep. He does ADR voice on Star Trek Deep Space Nine. ADR voice on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. That's cool. Captain Ron, Under Siege, Leap of Faith. Let's get into Star Trek.
I only see him. He's only credited as Borg ever in First Contact.
In First Contact, yeah. It's a great voice. I don't think he's done the other. He's
quite the ADR voice person.
He really is. He's everywhere. The other character that I feel is woefully underused because he delights me every time. Every time he's on screen is the character of Reginald Barclay, who. I just find him great, played by Dwight Schultz. He's kind of an ancillary character. We get a couple of stories from him, but he definitely has some issues going on, and is constantly in Troy's office working through his stuff. And he becomes a central character at the end of Voyager and helping get Voyager back to the right place at the right time. So he's great. He's underused here. He's used as a gaffe, and we don't really get to see enough of him. So
yeah, people who were familiar with the A-Team back in the 80s would know him as Howling Mad Murdoch.
You're right. Yep, that's right. Yep. That's how they would know him. Dwight Schultz. Yep. Mad Murdoch. And Adam Scott, Defiant Con Officer. Adam Scott, I know it's a little bit random, but we're in the middle of watching Parks and Rec around this place, and he plays Ben, the accountant. He's in Parks.
How did I miss him in here? Where was he?
He's on the Defiant.
Oh, he's on. I just totally. I guess I wasn't paying enough attention on the Defiant in that moment to see him. That's funny. I totally missed him.
And Robert Picardo is the holographic doctor, which is, again, fan service. Nice that he's here as Gates McFadden is leaving, crawling through the Jeffries tube. He is launched. He, of course, is our central doctor in Voyager.
Well, and what's the other guy who's the one who pops up? Isn't he also in Voyager, who's the one who pops up on the holodeck?
Yes, absolutely. Ethan Phillips, he doesn't play a human. He's got spots. I can't remember what his... he plays Neelix. I can't remember what his race is.
Neelix was a Talaxian hybrid.
Talaxian, that's right. He was a Talaxian. He had this girlfriend.
1/8 Mylian. Thank you,
Yes.
Google. I love it.
Google's the best. How did this end up doing at an award season, Andy?
This was more popular at award season than its predecessor. It had 8 wins and 21 nominations. Over at the Academy Awards, Michael Westmore, Scott Wheeler, and Jake Garber were nominated for Best Makeup. They lost to The Nutty Professor, kind of kicking off Eddie Murphy and his multiple, well, it wasn't really his multiple costumes, but certainly his fat suits. And I will say they did a really good job with The Nutty Professor. It's hard to argue that. Although this is one of those things. The makeup is really good in here. The new Borg makeup is really good, but I think a lot of people are probably like, well, we've seen the Borg before. So I think that might be why they lost.
Yeah.
Over at the Saturn Awards, the Academy of Sci-Fi Fantasy Awards, it was nominated for 10 nominations, which was fantastic. Best Sci-Fi Film, it lost to Independence Day. Best Actor, Patrick Stewart, lost to Eddie Murphy in The Nutty Professor. Best Director, Jonathan Frakes, he lost to Roland Emmerich for Independence Day. Best Supporting Actor, Brent Spiner, who won. Best Supporting Actress, Alice Krige, she won. Best Writers, Brandon Braga and Ronald D. Moore, they lost to Kevin Williamson for Scream, which seems like an odd one for sci-fi, but okay. Best, I guess in the horror camp, the horror side of things. Best Music, Jerry Goldsmith, lost to Danny Elfman for Mars Attacks. I have to disagree with that one. It's fine music, but Jerry Goldsmith, I think, does so much more here. Best Makeup, again, they lost to Nutty Professor. Best Costumes, Deborah Everton, she won for the costumes with this film. Thank goodness, because I wanted her to get credit for that fantastic neckerchief that Cochran wears. And Best Special Effects, John Knoll over at ILM, lost Independence Day, but they did a great job. ILM with the digital ships, this is really kind of the first time where most of the ships are all digital and not models. I think the Borg ship was actually a model, but I think everything else was all digital, and they look really great. But yeah, they did lose to Independence Day.
Well, and the hoops they had to jump through for that to make the spine work on that giant crane, to put Alice Krige on that giant crane and merge her with the body. That's a feat of kind of mechanics and CG, and it's beautiful.
It really is. And then over at the Image Awards, Alfre Woodard was nominated for Best Supporting Actress, but lost to Loretta Devine in The Preacher's Wife. So there you go.
How about in the numbers? How did it do at the box office?
Well, between the somewhat success of Generations and the potential thrill of their most exciting enemy, the Borg, Paramount did give the team $46 million to make First Contact, or $70.4 million in today's dollars. That moves it to the second most expensive Star Trek film in adjusted dollars, behind the first Star Trek film, which is still way ahead, more than twice the budget of this film in today's dollars, if you can believe that. Wow. $152.3 million.
Jeez.
I know, it's crazy. Feeling the November holiday slot was working for them, the team stuck with it, as they did on the previous film. They opened this film November 22nd, 1996, opposite Schwarzenegger's holiday attempt, Jingle All the Way, and the limited release of Shine. It took the number one slot for 1 week until Disney's live-action remake of 101 Dalmatians knocked it down a slot, and the holiday glut of films quickly knocked it out of the top 10 in just 4 weeks, which is really quick. First Contact did go on to make $92 million domestically and $58 million internationally, for a total in today's dollars of $229.5 million. That gives it an adjusted profit per finished minute of $1.4 million. Better than Generations, but not by much. So, but still, the team TNG was successful enough for another run in 2 years.
It's hard. This is still my favorite TNG film. I really like what they did with the raw material of the film, even though I have some script problems, as we've discussed. But it looked good. It generally felt good. It's fallen down in the ranking for me a little bit after this viewing, but I still get a lot of satisfaction out of it. And the stuff that happens on the ship is so much better than the stuff that happens on Earth, that I give it a little bit more of a forgiveness, more of a pass.
I do too. I mean, and really, it's the TNG film that I will watch again. I'm not as much a fan of the other ones, but this viewing, I ended up just having so many more problems with the story than I ever had before, and I feel like it's going to kind of keep plaguing me every time I rewatch it. So I don't know if I'm going to return to this one as much as I will have thought I would have. So
It's a nice clip film. Like I feel like I could watch, lots of the clips of the stuff happening on the ship and kind of move on.
Yeah.
So overall, pretty good. Very much looking forward to how you rank it, Andy.
Well, let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel or just swipe over in your podcasty device and tap the Flickchart button. It's right there. You just tap it and you'll jump right over to this movie.
All right, first up, we have Star Trek First Contact, or Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? It's the Oh Brother block conundrum again. I'm going to say Oh Brother.
Well, that's not good. I'm going to say Oh Brother,
I just don't have
too.
the story problems.
I know.
Yeah,
I'm going to say that too, but it hurts me.
Star Trek First Contact, or Atlantic City.
Star Trek First Contact.
Yeah, I'll say First Contact. Star Trek First Contact, or no. First Contact for me.
Yeah, First Contact.
Star Trek First Contact, or Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. I'm going with Baby Jane.
I'm going First Contact.
All right, let's do it.
Let's do it. 1, 2, 3. Paper.
Rock. Well, you take it. First Contact, or The Asphalt Jungle. I'm going to say Asphalt Jungle.
I'm going to say Star Trek First Contact.
All right, here we go.
1, 2, 3. Rock.
Scissors. Oh.
2 for
Crushing
2.
me twice. Star Trek First Contact, or Kind Hearts and Coronets.
Star Trek First Contact.
Yeah, I'll give you First Contact on this one.
All right.
First Contact, or The Long Kiss Goodnight. I'm going to go with The Long Kiss Goodnight.
I will also go Long Kiss Goodnight.
First Contact or Stagecoach. Definitely First Contact.
First Contact.
All right. Well, that leaves it at 162 out of 317 movies on our list. So
really,
it's in the bottom half.
But not by much.
Not by much. It's definitely in there. Let me see where it's puts it at. From what we've seen, that puts it right below the motion picture, right above The Voyage Home.
I guess that feels about right in terms of our overall Flickchart ranking. 162 out of 317.
That's it's just below. It's like 51%.
Yeah, 51%. That's fascinating. Where did it end up on your personal Flickchart?
It ended up, it's in my top 20%. It's at about 744 out of 3814. So it's up there. It's something that I definitely enjoy, but it's it's not like top 10 or anything.
I am really surprised I re-ranked it myself, and it is it ended up. I worry that I don't know. I was hungover when I ranked it this time because it ended up at 499 out of my 996. So it's at 50%. Like it's right in the middle. Yeah. And according to that on letterboxd.com/thenextreel, that means I should be rating it at a 2.5 star out of 5. I disagree with that. I have more fun with this movie than 2.5 stars. And in fact, right now, I think it's actually rated at 4.5 stars with a heart. And I think after our conversation, I'm probably going to dump it to a 4 and leave it right there with a heart.
It probably was a 4 for me, and then after this watch, it dropped a little bit. So it's 3.5, but I like it. I just, I feel like they missed the mark so often in the story department here that it ends up frustrating me. The Borg Queen frustrates me. There's a lot of things that frustrate me with it, and I feel like they could have really made the definitive Next Generation film battling the Borg, and I feel like they missed their mark by introducing the Borg Queen and not doing enough with what they were doing on Earth. So I'm at 3.5 because I still enjoy it despite my issues.
What's funny about this is that Ron Moore goes on to do Battlestar Galactica, which, to my eye, is the definitive Borg battle, right? It is the definitive Borg story. So maybe I just need to go back and watch that series again.
There you go.
All right. Where do we go from here, Andy? What troubled seas lie ahead?
We are going to be jumping forward a couple years, and we're going to hit up Star Trek Insurrection, which will be fun to revisit and see how it ends up playing out. I remember kind of enjoying it enough, but not loving it. So I'm curious to kind of revisit this one and see how it ends up on a rewatch.
Yeah, me too. I'm nervous about it because my memory of it is much better than other people tell me I should think about it.
Yeah.
That these next two films are really really terrible, and I don't remember them that way.
That's my recollection of them. So
That they're really terrible?
I think that I seem to feel like, pretty subpar with both of them. So I'm curious to revisit them and see if they are, or if there's more merit to them than I'm just not remembering.
Well, I'm really excited about that, Andy. I can't wait for next week, because when the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Amazon giveth, Andy.
As Amazon always doeth.
I don't know. I went with a 1-star today.
Ooh, looking forward to it.
Yeah, I did it because it sounds like one of my people. This comes from Oregon Bird.
Who
says
probably is one of your people.
Yeah. A bird. Cheesy and violent, says Oregon Bird. I thought I might watch the 1966 Fantastic Voyage tonight, but after seeing the trailer, it seemed very cheesy. So I thought a more modern sci-fi movie would do, like First Contact, which has been praised as one of the best Star Trek movies. But this movie was feeling almost as cheesy as Fantastic Voyage. At around 30 minutes, things turned quite violent. At 36 minutes, I turned off the TV, grabbed my bowl of popcorn and beer, and went back to reading my current Star Trek book. I just wasted 36 minutes and $4 renting this movie. It left a bad taste in my mouth, but at least the popcorn was tasty. If this is one of the best Star Trek movies, I would hate to see the worst. I still think Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home was a good one, much better than the first half hour of First Contact. Very disappointed. I would just add, maybe if you wanted a better taste in your mouth, don't watch this movie with a bowl of popcorn and beer.
I like that they're fans of the Star Trek books, though. Like,
I know.
There's a weird little thing going on here. I'm like, is this person enjoy Star Trek or not? Because they
Right. What are you possibly, like, what do you fall in love with that you love the books but not the movies? There's a Venn diagram. It's like the circles don't connect at all.
Right, exactly. Very strange. Well, I went with a 5-star on this one by Putter53, who says, a great night watch. It was a joy to watch their history being made. I never liked the Borg. When the captain did the right thing, I loved it. Loved the part where the Valcons heard the music. I love this. This person must have read that other review that the Valcons.
With Leonard Nimoy and Scooty?
Exactly.
How do you find those? Oh, thanks, Amazon.
It's hard to believe that we've been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
You're telling me producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our originals page when shopping for books and movies we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great conversations.
I was so excited for our big Star Trek film franchise series this season. All those movies adapted from Gene Roddenberry's original 1960s TV show.
As a huge fan, I know that you geeked out over analyzing the adaptations.
Absolutely. From the motion picture to the Kelvin timeline films, seeing the Enterprise cruise on the big screen was a dream come true.
Our list of source material isn't just all books and plays. We have the original series in our list of source material. You can rent the episodes to watch and enjoy, and support the show in the process.
For our Millennium Trilogy series, we covered films adapted from the original books that launched Lisbeth Salander, the girl with the dragon tattoo, the girl who played with fire, and the girl who kicked the hornet's nest.
As much as I love Fincher's version, the original Swedish versions are the way to go. We also did our Die Hard series in Season 7.
I can't believe Die Hard and Die Hard 2 were adaptations. Two of the greatest action movies ever.
Well, one of them at least. The other is awfully fun, though. We revisited the classic Mary Poppins for our 1960s movie musical series. A spoonful of sugar always helps the medicine go down.
Old Boy was intense for our Park Chan-wook Vengeance trilogy, and East of Eden and Giant were highlights of our James Dean series.
And a fun time travel mind bender with Predestination to cap things off.
Find all the books behind these adaptations and more at thenextreel.com/originals.
Dive into the source material for your favorite movies. Check it out today, thenextreel.com/originals.